Welcome to today's conversation. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our speaker and coach for today, Dr. David Hilson. Welcome, David.
Hi, thank you, Phil. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. So today we're going to be talking about risk management, and our main focus is on the risk management professional as well as several other standards. So David, what's your impression about the RMP certification and all these standards that we've got to talk about?
Well, as you know, Phil, I'm a fellow of PMI, and PMI has a wide range of certifications covering different specialisms within the project management arena. And the PMI-RMP, the Risk Management Professional Certification, is intended for people who specialize in risk management within projects. So the main certification that PMI offers is the PMP, the Project Management Professional, which covers the basics of project management. These additional certifications are kind of PMP plus. So the RMP, and here's the content outline for the exam available on the PMI website, pmi.org. The RMP is for people who already have the project management basics, but who want to specialize in risk management within the project arena above what you would expect from a normal project manager or project team member.
Sure. So from what you've seen, do you think this is a very popular certification in the world, or do you think it's still emerging in popularity?
It's got a long way to go, I think. We've had just recently, I think it was 3 years ago, a second update, a second edition of the RMP certification. And I think it's much more tightly focused now on what risk management specialists actually do in projects. And so I think this is a great foundation to recognize what project risk specialists actually do in practice. But to illustrate the level of the RMP certification, it might be worth focusing on the recommended knowledge and skills which go along with this certification. Absolutely. The structure is DTKS, domains, tasks, knowledge and skills. So there are 5 domains, and then within each domain there's a number of tasks, what you would expect a risk specialist to do on a project, and then there's associated knowledge and skills, what you would expect a risk management specialist to know and be able to perform in that particular domain. So if we look at the back of the exam certification, there's a set of core knowledge and skills which just describes what a risk specialist should know as their background knowledge. And so there are 3 key documents that the risk management specialist would be expected to be familiar with. The first is the PMI practice standard for project risk management, which has been out for some time. I think it's due for an update soon, but it's a great document in terms of going beyond the PMBOK guide and saying what we need to do in practice to make risk management work in projects. That's the first document that every risk specialist in projects should be familiar with if they want to take the PMI-RMP. The second is the PMBOK guide itself. Oh, if I can pick this up. This is the 6th edition, which came out in September 2017. I was the vice chairman of the update project for this and responsible for the risk chapter. This is the kind of the base level and some great stuff in here. Obviously, general project management, but chapter 11 is the risk management chapter. And that should be familiar for every risk management specialist. Incidentally, did you know there's a joke in the contents list of the PMBOK guide?
Oh, really?
Yeah. Risk management is chapter 11. So for all Americans, that will be something to laugh at. Europeans and everybody else are going, what? Okay, anyway, the PMBOK guide, chapter 11, core reading. And the other thing as a risk specialist you must be familiar with is an ISO standard. It's ISO 31000. This happens to be the Australian printout of it, but it's available in every country. ISO 31000 Risk Management Principles and Guidelines. And this presents a set of 11 principles, a framework for risk management, a generic process for risk management, metrics for measuring whether or not risk management works. This is the standard, the ISO standard, and it's consistent, of course, with the PMBOK guide and the PMI practice standard. But every true risk specialist should be familiar with this. And incidentally, this is going to be updated and re-released in 2018. Okay. There's not huge changes to the principles and framework, but it's just bringing it up to date. This was originally issued in 2009. So I think the RMP certification is PMP plus. It's not for the general project manager or project team member who's interested in risk. It's really for the risk management specialist within the project management environment. And that will become clear when you look at some of the domains, tasks, knowledge and skills that are required.
Very interesting. Regarding the ISO standard you have here, does it really align very solidly with the PMBOK guide and, you know,
the practice standard? Yeah, it's the other way around, really. The ISO standard is the kind of international standard, and the PMBOK guide aligns with that. PMI is very clear that PMI develops its own standards. We have our own standards department, and so we have a standard in risk management, which is the practice standard, and then that's played out in terms of inputs, tools and techniques and outputs in the PMBOK guide. But the international standard is the ISO standard. So PMI has a kind of a sideways look to the ISO standard, is aware of it. We don't quote it directly in the PMBOK guide, but it is entirely consistent. And part of that is because the experts who write the PMBOK guide are global experts who are aware of the international standards. So there's an ISO standard in project management, and the PMBOK guide is aware of that and consistent with it, but the PMBOK guide stands alone.
Gotcha. Well, thank you very much for this introduction, Dr. David Hilson, and we'll be right back speaking a lot more about the risk management content outline from the PMI and all these other standards that you see on the table here.